Welcome to MOTS, where we'll be applying the Manzer or mostly Thurlow scale of quantitative analysis of pop culture narrative to a binary system.
MOTS!
This podcast contains spoilers, mature content, and language. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome to MOTS. I'm Chris Morgan, and I am here with Ian Manzer.
Hello.
Scott Thurlow.
Hey there.
And we just saw, I don't know why I'm going to start laughing, Alien Covenant, the newest in the Alien
Franchise.
/ Prometheus / Ridley Scott franchise.
The 29th sequel to Alien, correct?
Well, it depends. Do you include the Alien versus Predator
That's
movie?
an episode for another day.
Yeah.
That's all canon.
Go on.
So who would like to give a synopsis of the movie? No, wait, actually, who wants to give a funny logline before we
I
start
think he's got the log line.
Well, in a remake of the island of Dr. Moreau, this is the planet of Dr. Roboto.
Yes, indeed.
And Scott.
All right. So my synopsis is applies to this film and most other Alien films in the franchise, in the series, is we get signal, we find aliens, we get killed. More or less. And you get killed and or escape at the end, depending on what character you are.
Exactly.
And that's pretty much it. Like, I mean, I could describe the plot to you, but I think we'll just talk about it. Like, that's pretty much what happens.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where any more of a synopsis, we might as well just go ahead with it, because there's a lot to this movie.
Exactly.
So just trying to put it into little boxes we have will be difficult enough. So with that, Ian, would you like to tell us how this movie starts?
Well, it starts off with taking care of some business from Prometheus, with having David, the artificial intelligence robot, talking to his creator, Guy Pearce's...
Old man Wayland.
Yeah, exactly, tying up loose ends there. Yeah. And then it cuts forward to basically a spaceship going to colonize a planet. Of course... issues occur in space travel. I don't know, solar flare.
An ion something or something like that.
At least they didn't say quantum.
Tachyon beams hit them, but like it's more based in real, like, actual possibilities.
We did a review of a short story, a Japanese one, where basically a solar. They have basically a solar
sail failure.
Yeah, and that leaves them kind of damaged. A lot of the captain dead. And they find a signal that leads them to a planet, which seems lovely at first. And then aliens arrive. And they're trying to escape. They meet up with David, the AI synth from Prometheus, and he leads them to safety. And I think that's basically the end of the introduction.
Yeah, he saves them from the aliens they first encounter early on exploring the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So, what'd you think about it?
I liked the kind of... It's like listening to someone philosophically muse about the future of space travel and some of like the problems that might come with trying to colonize other planets, and also about like God and Creator. And it's very, very slow. If you don't like kind of slow builds and slow burns of a plot, you'll hate the opening to this. I happen to enjoy the kind of the trickle of the stream that this film does for the beginning.
The issue is I do generally enjoy a slow burn, like, build-up thing, but this one, like, I don't think it was as philosophical at the beginning as you seem to recall it as. Sure, they introduced a couple of elements, but I thought it was, like, while fine, really, overall, it was the least engaging part, at least of the intro body conclusion, to me. So I might go with a 0. It certainly, once they meet David / Michael Fassbender on the planet, and he rescues them, brings them back to his little sanctuary, I think that's when it really starts to take off, and I delve more deeply into those things. Just that I thought the intro was a bit slow for me. I may be a soft 0, but I think I might give it a 0.
After the discussion between Wayland and David, it immediately cuts to space, and Jerry Goldsmith's theme from Alien, which appears throughout the movie.
Sure.
Opened it up, and that's kind of right where it caught my attention. And like Alien, it is a slow burn at the beginning. They do a lot of panning around the ship, a lot of following David around.
No, Walter, his other...
Walter, I'm sorry.
Another copy of...
There's another Fassbender in this movie, and it's Walter.
Yes.
A kinder, gentler David.
Sure. But yeah, so they did all that stuff, and...
Oh, no.
It was good.
What I'm saying is I really enjoyed that stuff, because one of the things, when they got to the planet and so forth, because James Franco, the captain, dies. Yeah.
He's in it for like 2 seconds.
I was going to say, he appears in pictures, a video, and dead. Now, the interesting part of the first act was I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, because I didn't know where I was going, and I was getting frustrated. But, when you put it in context with the whole movie, it actually works so much better. Like the movie, a lot of times you'll say setup, some of the parts are better than the whole. This movie, some of the parts I don't think would equal the whole.
I guess I'll say it this way. I'm still going to give it a soft 0. While it was like okay enough, it's just that it wasn't as engaging watching it, like you just said, comparing it to the whole. Well, I hadn't seen the whole yet. It was supposed to get me into it, right? So at that time, during the actual moment of watching the movie, I thought it was just a little bit plotting. Not meandering, I'll say plotting. So that's why I'm just going to give it a soft 0, but still a 0.
I'm going to give it a 1. This was actually my favorite part of the movie, and and as I said, it's not for everyone. I knew that watching it.
And normally, like I said, I like this kind of stuff, but I see where you're coming from.
But so I'm going to give it actually a fairly strong 1, and if you are into this slow-paced sci-fi, you will as well. So
sure. I'm definitely giving it a 1, because at the time I wasn't frustrated enough. Like, I hate this.
Neither was I.
I enjoyed it because, I think we were talking precast where, Ian and I are definitely our favorite movie is the original Alien. Out of all of them, I mean, for me, it's one of my top, of all time.
Sure.
And this was like Alien with a little Prometheus put in there and a little Aliens thrown in there. It was like proportionally right, but it was actually I felt like it was always going somewhere. So I'm giving it a very strong 1 as well.
I get you. I'm just not. But it's not a strong 0 either on my end.
Right. I did.
Fair enough.
And with that, Scott, would you tell us about the body?
Right. Yes, I will. So as Ian mentioned, they start encountering, they get infected pretty quickly as they're exploring and trying to learn more about the planet, which I'll say here up front that the characters in this Alien movie made smarter, more informed choices. They didn't make any dumb mistakes. They had accidents, yes. However, no one did anything stupid, I felt.
And also, I just want to say here that when characters did act irrationally, there were kind of reasons.
Even that made sense for them to do it. Yes, agreed. So I'll say that. So they unleash unwittingly, 2 of the crew members, pretty quickly get infested and turn into aliens. And a hooded figure comes and saves them, basically fires a flare, and that ends up being David, the synth from Prometheus, who has been his story to them. So the surviving crew, he brings them back to a huge structure, sanctuary, where they see tons of rotting body, long dead bodies. I think it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, kind of looks like Pompeii almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that was actually pretty cool, so we're talking about in style. But regardless, it ends up being the ship that Elizabeth Shaw took from Prometheus that she flew off in with David, and the ship is there. That was the thing giving out the signal, etc. So that's why, and David gives them one version of events that they were crashed and marooned, and the payload, which is the toxin or whatever, the pathogen that turns people into aliens, accidentally was released and killed everybody. We found out later that is not the case per se. So he brings them to Sanctuary, and they're exploring around, and it becomes increasingly obvious that he has been up to devious experiments on this island, using the pathogen and his various methods of experimenting in alien reproduction, if you will. So that's sort of a reveal. And I think the body ends, we'll say, when they figure it out. They figure out he indeed is masterminding all this. He has ill intentions towards them, and Dan McBride has to come in, who's one of the crew, and save them and save the surviving people who are there. So I think that's where it picked up, because of the fact that we'll get more into this. So Fassbender is basically playing 2 synth roles against himself. One being sort of having a creator god complex, if you will, and the other just being sort of part of their crew, but has come to at least have somewhat more, empathy towards them than a robot might, than synths normally do. So I think that stuff was really good. When David is talking to himself and sort of explaining like his motivations and his ideas and where he's come to be at in the state of mind, if you will. And the crew, like, again, we'll talk about in Protagonist, but I thought some of the character building moments between the crew and the body were pretty solid, pretty well done. A number of people die or get murdered, like we said, in accidents or by aliens or both. And those scenes were like the action scenes that were in the body were quite good. So I'm going to give it a pretty solid, strong 1. I think overall, if I left anything out, you guys go ahead.
Well, I'm going to say that you said Pompeii, it kind of reminded me more of like Babylon or Sumeria, that kind of like Mesopotamian culture.
Sure.
And in a way, their sanctuary is a ziggurat in a sense. And for having such an open space, they like xenomorphs are scariest because of their like the claustrophobic environment in alien films. Even like Aliens, Alien 3, whatever. It's always very like narrow
tight
corridors,
space.
Tight space. They don't know. And they played, and considering that's what makes the xenomorphs scary, they actually did a fair job of in this open space with
still making it feel claustrophobic.
Yes, yeah, and I have to give it full credit for that. It's interesting because this isn't it. In a way, the aliens are kind of tertiary to the plot of this.
Kind of, yeah. Which I think is a smart choice.
Yeah, and having the discussions between Fassbender and Fassbender,
Fassbender
David
on
and
Fassbender.
Walter, their discussion over the role of artificial intelligence, which are immortal and better than humans, and like what are will you always choose to be a slave? That kind of stuff was like very.
Are you a
interesting.
synth or a slave?
And that makes like the secondary, the crew members were also in a sense, I would say, not tertiary but secondary to the plot. It's a story of 2 robots discussing their
role
existence.
in life. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what this movie's about.
Sorry, before you go on, there's one thing I didn't mention. Of course, like was in Prometheus, and again in most sci-fi, there's a big ion storm happening, so they can't get down to the planet.
Yeah.
Like whatever. It's a detail that's there, but actually that looked cool, so we'll talk about it later. But it's part of the body.
Well, the whole Pompeii I was talking about was like the way that the bodies were lined. Yeah, because it's definitely more of a Mesopotamian thing. One thing I liked about you brought up with the aliens not really being
the focal point.
Yeah, not the focal point. The thing I loved about it was I love the subversion, because from the trailers it looks like most of the action takes place on the ship. That's where they find out.
Yeah, they slow rolled us pretty well.
It's just like the ship basically was there to find out what the beacon was,
and then get fucking exploded.
And then they
an accident involving aliens.
Then they never go back to the ship. The film completely had me where I'm like, this is awesome. Is when David has the flashback, because at the end of Prometheus, they were taking the ship back to where the architect's homeworld was. So the ship flies overhead, and the crowd's cheering. It's getting ready to like dock into this thing. And then it starts dropping all those things
and
from
then the pathogen
starts dropping on all the people, and
creeping death descends upon them.
David's standing up there. I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm not sure if
that scene would stand out for sure.
And I'm not sure if this goes into conclusion, his little secret laboratory. Is that more in conclusion?
No, I think it counts. I was going to wait for one of you guys.
Because that was super creepy, really effective.
And awesome.
And amazing.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like nothing you haven't seen before in this kind of thing. The way people discover things, how the evil's found with the secret Dr. Moreau here doing all sorts of things. But it was just because you've seen it before doesn't mean this one wasn't really well done.
I agree. And you're right. So as it reveals, like he's revealing to Walter, his synth brother, as he calls him, like what actually happened, like a la that scene, and how he's come to see himself. And they're having a sort of like duel, if you will, like mental duel and then physical duel. And all the other crew members start to figure it out, and if not been outright, like, implied. So I think that's about where it cuts off. But all that stuff was great. I agree. Every single moment of the body, I was riveted by it. And yes, the alien is there, like kills 1 or 2 people as well. But but
there's actually 2 different kinds of alien.
Yeah, it's almost like in the background. Like the more interesting stuff was him showing like his whole like what do you say? Like I become a zoologist essentially.
Yeah.
When he's unveiling like his nefarious experiments, that was super interesting. And he has always like fucking desiccated. Like what is that when you put them like when you display all the bodies? It's called something.
Yes.
I should know this word. I should know the term. I forget. But that's how his setup is.
They were kind of dry preserved.
Yeah. Whatever it was, it looked really cool, and it was part of his plan. And as it unfolds, and he, like, one of the lines of dialogue that I like, we'll talk about, but he was like, I've been experimenting hybrids and what have you. He like throws it in. That's what he's been doing. That's his purpose. That's what he's come to believe himself to be.
And the cool thing is, except for the fate of Elizabeth Shaw, nothing he said was a lie. It was just a version of the truth.
Sort of, yeah.
Which was interesting.
But yeah, I mean, I thought it was strong throughout. The body was stand out to me because of all the things we said.
And again, I was wondering where this is going, because you saw in the trailer, I saw, my watch flashed, and I was like, oh my God, we're an hour into the movie. And the thing that kept me going through the whole movie, not that I didn't really enjoy it as it went along, was because I didn't know where they were going.
Sure.
And when I can't get, like, the worst movies are like things like Avatar. In the first 10 minutes of the movie, you're like, I know how this is going to end. You have to wait 2 hours. Or Tim Burton's,
all right.
Where you know the twist.
Sure.
This one, I didn't know where the fuck it was going for most of the movie.
For a while. Sure.
Yeah. Until you get to the finale, yeah.
Which we'll get to, but I think we're all giving it a 1, right, to the body. So strong 1 as well.
All right.
And speaking of conclusion, isn't that you?
And that's me. And basically the conclusion is finding out that this is the right thing. Well, the captain of the ship confronts David because an alien shows up, kills one of the crewmates, and he kills the alien, and David's upset, and he goes, okay, what the fuck's really going on? And David's like, let me show you. I've been working on this stuff. And he walks out there, and it's one of the eggs from the original Alien.
He's got an egg room.
And the egg opens up, and he goes, go ahead, take a look, or something like that.
It's perfectly safe.
And, it hits...
And Facehugger gets him, obviously.
Facehugger gets him, and from Billy Crudup, from Dr. Manhattan, arises the alien that you see in the trailers, and that's going to be plaguing him the rest of the movie. Or one of them. Or the type of alien. So basically it's uncovering
the iconic alien, we'll call it, because as we said, there were other various species.
Yeah, the iconic alien.
Xenomorphs.
Yes.
So basically the ending's a lot of uncovering
I don't mean
David's
to be xenomorphist. Sorry, go on.
Most of the ending is uncovering David's plan. The David versus Walter battle, and it kind of leaves it at which one dies, but everybody knows.
We weren't fooled.
We weren't
Other
fooled.
audiences might have been.
We weren't fooled. And I think a lot of ways Ridley Scott, because at the beginning, Walter loses his hand. And at the end, the protagonist, the woman, or one of the protagonists, Daniels. She keeps looking to make sure he doesn't have an arm, but when he loses his arm, it was from acid, so it's kind of melted. And this one was like a clean cut. So Ridley Scott was definitely saying, I'm not fucking with you. I hit a trope. Yeah. You guys are going to know it.
It's a nice detail, though.
Very nice detail.
Yeah.
So what happens is Danny McBride rescues them. They kill one of the aliens. They go up on the ship, and one of the other landing party members was infected and gave birth to another classic alien. Yes. There are some things, and I love this. Another subversion. In the original Alien, they got the alien out of the airlock. Aliens, they couldn't think of anything else, so they ripped it out of the airlock. This one, they went to rip it out of the airlock, but they had this whole thing. It wasn't just blowing it from the airlock. It was using the...
it was a video game setup.
It was a total video game setup, but it was very interesting. Yes. It was prolonged. They're in spacesuits. They're not holding on to a ladder, trying not to fall into the vacuum of space.
They were intentionally doing it and setting it up. Yeah.
It was a really exciting scene, and it should not have been. And then then they get rid of the alien, and
time to go back to hypersleep.
Time to go back to hypersleep. And right when there's this thing going on where Daniels loses her husband, James Franco, at the beginning, and they're talking about building a log cabin. And as David Walter is putting her in a cryosleep, she's like, "Will you help me build that cabin?" And he doesn't answer, and she's like, "You know the cabin?" And she's like, "Oh my God, you're David." And he puts her to sleep. And he's like, "Don't let the bed bugs bite." And my thing is, when her hyper chamber blackened, like she was asleep, I think they should have ended the movie right then.
Nah, I think the extra scene was great.
But I'm going to say is, I think they should end it then. But I'm not saying what came after it wasn't good, because David then walks to the established colony room where all the colonists are, and where they keep the embryos. One of which had died during the thing, and Walter had to get rid of it at the beginning of the movie. finds out he's going to infect the colonists.
He's got 2 alien embryos.
He's got 2 alien embryos, and he's got, so it ends on a really haunting thing.
If anyone has played Portal 2, it's the Portal 2 ending. There is so much more experimentation to be done. Boom.
Yeah.
Cut the credits. And I love that ending. I always will. And I think it was well done overall.
And I like the way they ended it with the voiceover of him giving the log as Walter and the ship flying away. I thought that was really nice.
It was a perfect touch, and it ended perfectly in the way I am going to greatly enjoy. So I'm giving it a strong 1.
I am too.
I am not. Because I felt that they could have ended it earlier with an implication that one of the guy who was pregnant, and they could have gone on board and it would have wrapped up nicely. This was a fan wank.
Okay, go on. Continue your point.
I just, you said, it's a clever way of doing something they've done 1,001 times. Yes, they've done it 1,001 times, though. And I was not as big. I see why it was there, and I think it was fan service.
It was fan service because, like you said, they could have definitely ended it. You could have somebody in hyperspace or hyperchamber, and you could have ended it without that whole action scene and still had that scene where she realizes it's David, not Walter.
Here's the thing. Is it fan service or fan wank? I guess that's where you fall on. There's a difference.
Fan wank
I know you
first.
are. And
here's
I get it.
I like Ridley Scott. I think he added this scene in there because he's like, you guys didn't like Prometheus? You want more alien action set pieces? Here you go.
It wasn't an action set piece.
It was an action
okay,
set piece.
I thought you were talking about specifically like the David thing at the very end.
The David thing is fine.
Okay.
That's
so that's what you're talking about. That's why. Okay.
Talking about the half hour of them fighting this thing.
Nah, it was like 10 minutes. It was
10 minutes, dude.
But the entire ending didn't particularly work for me.
All right.
So I'm going to.
I thought you were talking about the actual
No, the whole David thing was fine.
Okay.
But again, immediately when he comes running out of the temple area, I'm like, that's David and not Walter. There's no fooling.
No question about it.
But again, Ridley Scott, with always showing the arm.
Again, if you're a student of narrative, as we are, and I've seen so many narratives that have done something like that, it should be obvious to you, and was pretty much.
Listen,
If you're the LCD, maybe it's not.
This didn't particularly work for me, and that's all I'm saying is that But then again, I loved Prometheus. Everyone else hated it. I loved the deeper moments of this. I like the subtle parts of Ridley Scott's work.
All right,
I like this. So that's where I'm going with
I have 2 things to say to you guys.
Soft one or soft zero?
2 things to say to you guys. So, how about this? I'll call it. So, you, Chris, do not like Prometheus very much, right?
I'd give it about a C minus,
okay,
C minus.
And Ian, you like it quite a bit.
I give it a B+.
I'm in the middle of the road. So, in that vein, I think it was a serviceable fan wank, if you will, right? It was a pretty good fan wank.
Yeah. Well, a lot of
that fight specifically, that is. But I love again, as I said, the ending where he even says, "I'm going to tuck the children to bed" or something when she puts her.
I have no problem with the David scene.
Right.
So
you're talking about the fight scene, and and yes, given that, I see where you're coming from, buddy. But I still think it was pulled off well enough. It wasn't dragged out, and so I'm going to give it a decent 1.
And you're entitled to your 1.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, Scott, one of the things about the film, Scott, there's a lot of callbacks to the original
There were 4
Alien,
or 5 little nods.
And little nods, dialogue, little things. And I would snicker, but I'd hear Scott snickering. I'm like, okay, he caught that. But the ending, the whole thing, it's like the ending seemed to be an homage to both the ending of Aliens and the ending of Alien.
Yeah.
Because
at once, sure.
But he did it in a much... like I said, I think he did it in a much more interesting way than Aliens.
All right.
But my whole point is, I'm probably in the minority of this, but I would put Aliens at a B movie. So what I'm saying is, I like the fact that he was able to combine the two, not overdo it on the action, keep it paced well enough, so it hits all the spots without really,
Well, overstaying its welcome, I guess you're saying. Sure. All right. Well, I guess we'll just have to
so I'm giving
agree
it 1.
to give our scores at that point.
Scott.
Nope.
Oh. Ian.
Yep.
Themes.
Well, speaking of Prometheus. So Prometheus dealt a lot with the idea of humanity's search for its creator and
purpose.
What would have happened if your creator despised you, it thought you were a mistake. it was to me a fascinating look into like an era of science fiction and philosophy that you don't see much in movies. This one kind of continued that theme. One of the characters on there was a very religious man, and
which is a callback to Prometheus. I took it as
yeah,
such.
but him saying what is the role of faith in an era of science?
Sure.
So you have that aspect of faith, but what's really interesting is the kind of cycle of destruction between Wayland, David, the xenomorphs, and that Wayland is God to David, and David grows to resent his God, and ends up
he thinks eventually it's a flawed God.
Yeah, but it turns out and that David now, without a purpose because his creator is destroyed, in a way feels that he must become a creator himself, and becomes imperfect, just like he becomes his own father. He becomes the new Wayland here.
Sure, we all become what we most dislike.
Yeah,
and that's why I knew David had to survive, because the only narrative sense would be for him to be destroyed by his own creations eventually. But and that's why I'm glad that they're going to make another movie.
Yeah,
are they definitely making another one?
Apparently, production goes into start. It goes in.
Well, at least
begins next month.
Right. Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah,
I really didn't.
I just saw something about it.
All right, fair enough. So go on.
It's also a discussion over like the role of AI. Should we have AI that does have free will? Would we seek it to destroy that because the competition of it? Like there's a lot of. I mean, yes, it's not what I think Ridley Scott does, and why I think you said earlier that it's not as deep as you like to be, is that he doesn't provide many answers. Sure. He just asks questions,
and I'll agree,
for almost the entirety of both Prometheus and this. It's kind of like watching characters fumble through their own faith. Yeah. You know, whether it's an AI, whether it's people, and what it means to be like human and alive.
Well, existential angst is a theme, and everyone feels it in their own different way.
And I also they alluded to the fact that the one guy was a Christian, and then you saw another crewmate with the Star of David around her neck.
I did not catch that, really.
Oh yeah, and I thought that was really that caught my eye, because it's nice to see that there's different religions on there. There's secular.
I did not catch it at all.
Yeah, I like that. And at first, at the beginning, the discussion between Wayland and David, I was like, oh my God, they're going to hit us over the head with this, the whole movie. But it was, how do I say it? It was talk and action. Like, in other words,
it was a perfect cold open, and it applied to, it set up what you're about to experience.
Yeah, they weren't pontificating into the ether of the whole movie.
Yes.
There's actually the storyline and the action, and I don't mean action, violent action. I mean just in terms of
as the plot advanced.
Yeah, as the plot advanced, everything kind of had a payoff within that.
I agree.
Well, I think that the opening was heavy-handed, but I think it needed to be, because it's here's the point of Prometheus that you need to get in order to appreciate my themes I'm exploring in this movie.
I guess
so. He summed up it heavily, but it was necessary in a way.
That's what.
Just real quick, I'll describe it this way: I didn't feel it was heavy-handed, but it actually was, in terms of how it was handled. But also, it was if you're going to have a heavy-handed scene and interaction, introducing things like that, elements like that, then it was a very deft heavy hand, if you will.
Well, it was exposition. It was an exposition dump.
Yes,
and
that's
true. I don't think, because I think the two great actors
you can
involved
do
with it.
Well done exposition dumps,
and they did it as well as they could for summing up a 2-hour movie in a 5 or less scene.
Yeah,
that's why I want to see this again, because at the time I was kind of oh my God, I get the point of the scene. Can we move on? But now, in retrospect, now I've seen the whole movie, I'm I want to see that scene and follow it more closely, because a lot of things, and especially beginning and ending with a Wagner piece, Richard Wagner was
nice touch,
a Nazi.
So it's kind of... All right, take it easy, but I see what you mean. Either way, they connected it back, yes.
Yeah.
And I think again, it didn't answer many questions, but I think it's Ridley Scott working through a philosophy. So he ties up, he's this path doesn't work. So we're going to, I'm discussing this answer, and here's, now next movie I'm going to explore a different version of that. Yeah. And it's a neat project. And I would like to see the complete work of all of this now, just to see what his conclusion inevitably is.
Fair enough. But if we're answering the question of themes, I'm going to give it a strong one because of everything we just said.
Okay, and Scott. to antagonists.
Now I get to talk about antagonists.
Yeah.
So, as we just said, angst, God complexes, like abstract things like that. And yes, as portrayed incredibly well, as always will be the case by Michael Fassbender and versus Michael Fassbender, more or less. But so I'm going to call it that. Like, so if Steve were here, the personification of that is David the Synth and what he's come to understand, learn, and feel about himself and humanity and his role within the universe at large, being the nature of the character he is. And of course, maybe we'll talk more about this in dialogue, but his motivations made perfect sense to me. Like, it was a natural progression from Prometheus, and just in general, like, I'll apply to the themes of AI gaining consciousness. And there's one quick line when Walter says to him that people were like, you disturbed people, and Fassbender / David says, what do you mean? He's like, you were too real. People didn't like that the synth was too human-like, so I dialed it back a bit.
Well, it's really funny is like now, it's like his actions in Prometheus now make sense.
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
at the time you're like,
They make
why?
more sense, at least, of course.
Yeah.
They tied up a lot of loose ends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, like, so yeah, he's basically the embodiment of that. Like we said, he's Dr. Moreau on this planet doing what he's doing because he feels this is his role and mission in life, and explains it to everybody. And he's beyond your morality, essentially, which is another trope thing. Like, it's gray and orange morality. It's no longer black and white morality. And as personified by him, it was excellent, I think. And yes, of course, the aliens in various ways were there, and they were good again, like, in your face, like moment to moment monster. That's fine, and I think they actually look pretty cool and we're all done. And yes, we're menacing. You're a face hugger. You had your small little just created birth alien. You got your somewhat iconic alien, and then the iconic xenomorph obviously shows up there to have a duel at the end. All that was fine, but certainly it's Fassbender as in David, and I think he did a great job as such.
I agree.
Nothing more to add to that. So
Nope.
we give it a 1.
All right. Yep.
Okay, and it's to me with protagonists. And at first I was going to say Daniels. Now I'm going to say Walter. I mean, because Daniels...
We were talking about this off cast, and I think I'm going to agree with you as well.
Because Walter really... Without Walter, you wouldn't get the whole picture. But Daniels kind of acted as Walter's surrogate when it came to...
Exactly.
When it came to the crew. Like Danny McBride's character, to the characters that stayed up there was a protagonist for the character... Because they bring down a landing craft, and 3 of the crew members stay above on the colony ship. And it's kind of like... But everybody was kind of like... And, got to places where Walter couldn't, but without Walter, you would never have seen the complete picture.
Exactly.
It's really hard at this point because all of his stuff's tied in with David for the most part. He's a compassionate figure. He is caring. He's probably more human than he gives himself credit for. He is an amazing... No, what I mean by that, he goes, when he's like, you're too perfect, but his loyalty to the crew, because David was saying, his love for Elizabeth Shaw, and it turns out she was one of his experiments. He was talking about
love
this,
your experiments,
right? But he was talking about this love, but he loved her more like a lab, a pet that he decided to vivisect at some point. But Walter, through his actions, even though he wasn't supposed to be as human, actually
he was more human than he realized.
Yeah.
Except if he was programmed that way.
Well, I guess we'll never know, but that's the thing about
AI.
well,
is it adaptive programming? So, I mean, there's not really much else to add that's not tied to him. But if it's Walter, I'm definitely giving it a strong one.
So you're right. Like, I was going to, originally I was going to, if not make the case for, I thought the movie wants us to think that the crew collectively, a la classic alien thing, are all the protagonists, or at least Daniels, and maybe the captain until he gets taken out. So, but having thought about it from that point of view, it indeed, I agree, is Walter. Like, he's central to it. He's there for almost every important thing. A lot of it is seen through his eyes. He's with the crew for most of it, for 80% or more. So I agree that if we call it basically the antagonist and protagonist, obviously, are two sides, literally almost two sides of the same coin, that I have to give him a 1 on that front.
I'll agree, and Fassbender versus Fassbender.
Yeah, you can't get better than that. It's amazing.
At one point, David kisses Walter, and I just want to be like, I knew it was you, Walter.
Yeah, the classic question: would you make out with a clone of yourself?
Fassbender answered that with a strong,
resounding, definitive answer there. So sure.
So, Ian, supporting characters.
Here's where it gets tricky. Because
there are supporting characters I liked. And I think Danny McBride added a fantastic element. I'm shocked.
We all were surprised as hell that he's lived. Spoiler, he lived through the whole movie.
Hold on a second. I got to backtrack. I thought that was going to be it. I think you could be like, yes, there were supporting characters. Like in other words, just like nobody memorable, but yes, they were there.
Here's the thing is, like Ridley Scott, how I said earlier, was like, all right, we're going to have aliens. You want aliens? We have aliens. Oh, you want characters? Here, we're shoving this character in here. He'll give a 5-minute speech about like his motivations, all that,
and then die.
Let's move on to some actual stuff I'm interested in. That's what I felt watching a lot of these characters. And this is a problem with Prometheus too. Most of the AI were far more interesting characters, and that's I think like he's writing a think piece here over the nature. Humans, in a way, are a necessary evil in his script.
They're like ancillary to it.
And that's why I'm going to have to, I think, give it a 0 because most of the characters in here were, like, they did a fine job, but I don't remember many details. And if I do, it's the one detail that they kind of like, here's my one, they're all one-dimensional.
I get what you're saying, and like, here's my quick spiel about it. I mostly agree, but I thought they were better than Prometheus because Prometheus were like 0.5 dimensional. So, like, of course, anything is going to be better than that. But you're right. Like, yes, Danny McBride was pretty well, like, his character, I enjoyed his character throughout, and he served the purpose. Like, he was, you know, part, like, he made sense to it and had skills that any alien movie would have a character like that. But the other ones, I kind of like them too, but they got, because of the fact that, like, as you said, hey, here's 5 minutes, here's this character, and then either I'm gone or I'm murdered or whatever, an alien eats me, etc. So I don't know if it's enough to stand out. Maybe collectively it might get there, but I think that because it wasn't the point, really. Like, they're ancillary, they're tertiary to the whole plot.
I was going to say a lot of them were strong. I mean, they were like a little fleshed out, strong. Like, everybody's got like their moment in the sun, even if nobody was developed. Yes. Which is one of the things they pulled off really well in Aliens.
10 moments in the sun don't equal like an actual star.
After giving thought, because when we started the cast, I realized who the protagonist was, and that Daniels and Dr. Manhattan were the surrogates on the planet.
Dr. Manhattan.
And Danny McBride was I have to say, since you've got 3 surrogates, if nothing, even if they weren't completely developed themselves, the fact that they did their job with relationship to Walter, I'm going to probably give it a soft 1. I was going to give this a 0, but
I'm going to give it a soft 0. But it's close though. But how about this? To end off this point, if it wasn't Danny McBride playing that character, it wouldn't have mattered. You know what I mean? The same shit would have happened.
The only reason he's up there is to kind of give you what's going up on the ship.
Yeah. And maybe we'll talk about it in style. He was a reference to the original, but not like his character that doesn't make it a good character.
Walk in the park.
Yeah. Anyway, so soft 0 for me on secondary.
Okay. So
I believe it is.
Now we're on to dialogue.
With me. This is now a tough one because I've been turning over in my head ever since we left the movies and as we've been speaking. Because of the epic speeches between Fassbender, and even anytime he says anything to anybody, it's awesome. Like, he has the best dialogue and he delivers it in a great way, of course. The issue is there are many other things that are like so mundane and trite. Like, for example, the opposite example I have for you guys is when Danny McBride comes to rescue Daniels from the planet on a little like ship, and she's like, "Release the crane," and he goes, "I can't do that." And she goes, "Just do it." Like, it's so like, I didn't like that. Like, it was dumb. They could have had him say something else, like anything else. And they're not like when the crew is talking to each other, it's bog standard at best, delivered the best they can do.
Yeah.
But when the epic stuff happens, fucking Fassbender quotes Ozymandias. He says, "Look on my works and despair." Like, that was amazing. So it's really tough because how much credit should I give the really good moments that are mostly him doing that?
But if he's quoting like Shelley, then like
they quote it Byron. Like
what
Byron.
I'm saying is it's Fassbender. It's not really the dialogue.
I know that's
because
true,
what made the dialogue awesome in the original Alien is that basically they built the whole ship was basically practical, and these actors lived it.
I'm not trying to compare it.
But no. My whole point was the banal conversation that was interesting because that was improvisation from people who were like living together, and here it just sounded like scripted banal conversation.
Think of it this way: he's an android. He knows he has it programmed in his memory bank. So, like, he selects the most appropriate thing to say. Yes, that is a quote from reality. All I'm saying is, but even beyond that, like, when he was talking to Walter, that wasn't like he wasn't quoting like fiction and poems in his face.
Their scenes are the only time that the dialogue really seemed elevated. The rest of it was necessary, and most of the time, if it works naturally, I would be more on its side. But to me, when the crew interacted, it would just seem like stock.
It was stale a bit. Yeah, it was like stock is perfect.
They pulled it from Getty dialogue.
Yes, maybe. But even like at the very end, I'll talk the kids in, and he put the embryo. Like, that was a nice touch. He said something else earlier.
Don't let the bed bugs bite.
Yeah, that like wasn't a quote as well. But so like I said, it's tough for me because that stuff was so good. But you're right, the other stuff was so stock that I don't know where to come down on this one.
The other thing that made me cringe, because Lucas did this all over the prequel films, is they quoted a lot from the original Alien. So like walk in the park and, all these little things. It was kind of like, I know. Again, walk in the park, fine, but it was more happening so much.
It is happening again. Some of that stuff was more fan wanky, but I mean, I like the part at the final, like, the space battle, where she's like, let's blow this fucker into space. Like, that made me laugh. That was a nice touch.
Yeah.
And again, maybe style, but Tennessee, Danny McBride wearing a fucking hat. That's Dallas. Like, it's a salute to Dallas. I took it as.
Yeah. All right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, okay. But it's really tough. So you guys try to convince me one way or another. I'm 50-50 on dialogue right now.
If you take out the Fassbender stuff, which is basically I can't give that as much credit because of all they quote. No, I'm going to probably give this a soft 0.
So harsh.
Because I'm trying to decide if those scenes are really the dialogue or Fassbender. So this is definitely getting a 0 from me.
What do you think?
You remember the Lost World Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
All the scenes when they're like the big group of people, the mercenaries, when they team up together and they rush through.
Sure.
All that great conversation in there. No, you don't, because it's the same conversation we're having in this. And
I knew you were going to fucking say it. I was waiting for the punchline.
It's. I won't remember any of the dialogue.
What they said to each other at all.
I'll remember perhaps Fassbender quoting Ozymandias, but again, like, even that, it's one character quoting
a very famous saying. Yeah, I guess.
Does not make a good dialogue for entirety.
All right.
So I'm going to give it a soft 0.
You guys might have convinced me. You're right. As much as I like that stuff, it doesn't outweigh the mundane stuff, we'll say. So I'll go with the soft-ish 0 as well at the end of the day.
The end of the day.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, it's me with style. And first of all, as I said, the movie began with Jerry Goldsmith's theme to Alien. So right away, you invoke Jerry Goldsmith,
Of course.
The music's got an A from me already.
But that's nostalgia, you see. I'm going to say that.
And they did call back to a lot of Goldsmith music, but in its own right, the music was very good. As far as the production design, I loved it. I thought that I loved the look of the ships. I loved the look at the temple. I mean, everything, in Prometheus, you had the big head and everything. It seemed kind of weird. In this, it was actually part of the architecture.
It was there, sure.
It made a lot.
It was good world building.
Yeah, this movie made a lot more sense, even aesthetically. I thought it was great. I thought that, like, especially with the Moreau stuff, because inside the cavern, it looks like parchment paper.
Yeah.
And it looks very.
He's using what he had there.
It was not future at all. It was definitely like 19th century kind of, like the old, anatomy books.
Look like Leonardo da Vinci sketches.
Yeah.
But of aliens.
Yeah. So, I mean, they did a really good job of keeping the Giger stuff and also playing off the Giger stuff.
Mm.
All the aliens, even the ones from Prometheus that seemed a little more evolved, were different versions of the same thing, even though. So I thought overall the style was great in this movie. So I'm giving it a 1.
I don't have much more to add. Yeah, I thought it was pretty solid. Maybe you caught a couple things that I didn't, but overall, I thought it looked great, was shot great. There was nothing, again, the only thing that really would make me give a 0 to style is like, why did that happen? Like, that looked like an odd shot or whatever. And never thought that to myself at all. In fact, I thought it was quite visually appealing.
Yeah.
And everything else was.
It was extreme.
Little details were built into like that.
And the thing I liked was like when he showed how the pathogen infect everything, he has the little wasp type thing in amber. I thought that was really cool.
All that stuff was cool. Yeah. So the shots, the cinematography, and the soundtrack, all that I think is a damn solid 1.
I also like how they really kept it, that each area had its own stylistic elements. So they had the when they first arrive at the planet.
Yeah, good point.
There's that kind of it's very green, very like
kind of lush.
nature, lush.
It's Pacific Northwest.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then
You're right. It's Seattle. True. Planet Seattle.
But then you knew where, like, even when they go to the city of when they go to Pompeii, I'll call it. Like, yeah, they're doing more claustrophobic thing, but I kind of knew where everyone was when they're
it had a good
exploring
sense of
this
space.
thing.
Yeah, it did.
And that's a big
important.
problem in like works like this, which you can lose where people are.
Yeah.
I knew everyone was there where they needed to be. They had purpose for their actions, so I have to give it credit for stylistically for that. So.
And I was also saying, we were discussing the architecture. It also, I was thinking about, kind of reminds me of the Mayan in South America because it had the
a little bit. Sure.
And there's also but it was a definite mix of styles because then you can think about certain things that were Greek elements.
It was hold on real quickly. Shout out! It was a Numenera kind of thing to do.
Yeah,
awesome.
Oh, and this one's from my wife.
Go on.
The landing craft looked like the shuttles from Mass Effect. So I had to say that because as soon as that came on, I smiled. I was like, "Oh shit!" All right, so.
But either way, one's for style from all of us, I think.
Oh, yeah. And Ian, would you recommend this?
Yes and no. There's certainly people I would recommend this to. But would I recommend this overall is the big question. And, like, I would specifically have to judge the type of movies the person's into before I would recommend
so it
this
becomes
to
a
them.
relative recommendation.
So that becomes, but that I think edges on a soft zero for that point. I don't know. Convince me one way or the other because I don't know how to rate that.
I completely see what you're saying. I would recommend it, well, specifically to people who would be into it, and to it sort of a general, audience who maybe a person who is not as philosophically engaged as we are, because I think it presents it well enough without being too obscure about it, and I think it's an entertaining movie throughout. So, like, yeah, if you're a fan of the Alien franchise, if you liked or disliked whatever you thought of Prometheus, I would still recommend Covenant.
Yeah,
I'd recommend it in general. It's a good, entertaining movie to see. If it comes on whenever it gets syndicated, definitely check it out. So I think I'll give it a solid enough recommendation, even though I see what you were saying, E. But I think it's more over the edge for me to indeed is worth a watch. And I'd see it again as well.
Yeah, me too. I'd see it again. And this is definitely a movie you have to sit with. And there are action elements, but it's not an action film. But I know the people I would recommend this to. As a general thing, I'd say if you like really good, smart science fiction, you don't really need a big action quotient.
Sure.
It's good science fiction all around. It's got good narrative. Details are great. I would definitely recommend this. I'd probably be more like, it'd be easier to ask me who I wouldn't recommend this to.
All right.
I think you guys convinced me. I'm going to give it a 1 for recommendation because
nice.
I enjoyed it. I don't regret seeing this movie, which
I want to see it again.
I enjoyed it, and I would like to actually, as I said, I'm interested to see where this franchise goes
from here. For sure.
So that's definitely a recommendation there.
Yeah,
fantastic.
All right, nice.
So Ian,
changing your mind. What do we got here?
Oh, final scores.
Yep.
So Chris, you gave it a 9, and Scott and myself gave it 7s for different reasons. So overall, it's a 7.66.
Really? I think if we're going on a number scale, I think I would put it a little bit higher, but it's definitely way above average and well done. Not the most amazing thing you've ever seen, but goddamn solid.
Yeah, it's a solid movie. Yeah.
So
that's pretty much all I can say. Check out Covenant.
Yeah, and unless anybody else has anything to say, I think that's it.
Yep.
I'm Chris Morgan. I'm here with Ian and Scott.
And I'll be turning to a xenomorph soon. See you next time.
And good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.